Supply from the end of January this year to date is very disturbing. You cannot give any schedule to the public because PICO is working on the lines. Until that, you cannot give any timetable to the public.
We have details as Kumasi appears set to be worse hit by the impending power cuts due to overload of the lines and shutdown of the Bui power plant.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder. It's also brought to you by Belacqua Mineral Water. Tonight, if you live in Kumasi and Accra, you need to brace yourself for more erratic power cuts, at least until the end of the year, for the Ashanti regional capital in particular. If that is not enough bad news, we are also learning tonight with authorities confirming they cannot provide a scheduled timetable for the power cuts anytime soon. There have been coordinated press conferences both here in Accra and in Kumasi by officials led by the Energy Minister himself, Matthew Poku Prempeh. We have details of both press conferences for you with reactions pouring in. But we start in Kumasi, which is set to be worse hit by the power cuts. Listen to the managing director of the Electricity Company of Ghana in Kumasi, Kwame Ajimambedu, lay out what the problem is in Kumasi.
The unstable power supply from the end of January this year to date is very disturbing. The Greco 161 kV transmission line is overloaded. And this 161 kV line serves our red box supply point and goes all the way to the north. We are also aware that the Bui power plant is shut down due to low water level, as outlined by the Greco CEO. And due to these two problems, in evacuating power from Angomasu to load centers, we also experience low voltages.
So that is the ECG boss in Kumasi today at a news conference that was called, of course, to explain what has been happening since the beginning of the year. Let's go to Kumasi now. Let's bring in Erastus Asari Donko, who joins us on the telephone line right now. Erastus, of course, many have called for the timetable and confirm for me, he himself lays it out, that the erratic power supply has been happening at least for the last 3 months in Kumasi, and you still do not have a timetable. And it appears tonight that you cannot expect a timetable anytime soon.
Exactly, and it's 5:34 now. When it gets to 7 p.m., when you're going home, you don't know whether you have power or not, and that's the peak period. And sometimes if you go home and you do not have power, it could take you up to 12 midnight. Sometimes over to the next day before you get power. And so you are not sure whether you get power this evening or not. And he's saying they have no control over the fluctuations. And so they cannot give a timetable for something they have no control over. That is the explanation he gave us today.
We are not in the doomsday era whereby we said, today we're going to disconnect here and then alternate. Right now, we are waiting for Greco to give us the quantum of power that we have to manage. Not until that, you cannot give any schedule to the public because Greco is working on the lines. So they will come and tell us that ECG, we are going to work on this side of your area. We need you to reduce load by this amount. Therefore, we will notify our cherished customers. Until that, we cannot give any timetable to the public.
What about the peak time?
And the peak time, the overloading or congestion of the 161 kV line of the Greco is normally happens during the peak hours, which is from 7 to 9, roughly. So all that we plead to the public that around that time, if unfortunate happens that your light goes off, please bear with Greco and ECG because there's nothing we can do at that time because of the congestion. That's why Greco has put in place measures to connect Kumasi to the north, thereby evacuate some of the power from 161 kV onto the 330 kV line they are constructing now.
So Erastus, that's the confirmation that, as far as timetable is concerned, it's not something they can do. How are people in Kumasi reacting to this?
In fact, there is anger and anxiety amongst the people I've been speaking with so far. They are incensed by the fact that the ECG, who deals directly with them when it comes to power, does not have any solution, and so they are being told just to brace themselves up for outages that do not come with any timetable. Some of them are also saying that already there's a scheduled outage because it comes at certain times, specifically on a daily basis. So they don't see why the ECG cannot officialize this timetable so they can plan and work with it.
As for the power situation in Kumasi is very, very irritating, especially the fact that most nights the power goes off around the same time and comes back around similar time that it comes all the nights. So it's a bit difficult to understand the reason why they say that it is uncontrollable or is beyond their control, because the system goes off, triggers around the same time and comes back around the same time. So then if there's a timetable, then we know that, okay, between these time frames, we will be off. Then we can plan well. And looking at the heat situation, it's also very unbearable and it's really making it very uncomfortable for people. We can't plan, because you know that, okay, even sometimes during the day, it also goes. But for the nights, it's almost every night now. So perhaps we just accept it as if that's our timetable, that every night will go off. But I don't think they are treating us fairly. And I think they are not being sincere to Ghanaians, and especially we in Kumasi. They really have to do something about it.
I think it's very bad to hear that. It's very, very, very sad. We hearing that it's going to be sorted around by the end of next year or by the end of this year is really appalling. But I think that the ECG and maybe the president should have another meeting, then discuss and make possible amendments, then sort things out.
The most important factor in the development of any nation, if you ask me, is leadership. Not leadership at the level of the presidency, but then in all sectors. If I heard right, the ECG's position is that we would have intermittent lights out, but they don't have any control over it. They don't know when it will happen, so it will happen just like that. And that is leadership. It would affect our business. And at the end of the day, would want to travel out and stay out there because they have better leaders manning the various sectors. What is this? I'm disappointed, seriously. I'm totally disappointed. But then, unfortunately, in this country of ours, nobody has a position that is neutral. Anything you say, if it goes against the incumbent government, you are NDC. If it goes for them, you are MPP. So it's like we are suffering, but we can't see. It is unfortunate, but it is a sad day for me as a Ghanaian.
So some, of course, reactions there from the streets in Kumasi tonight on the back of that briefing. Erastus is still with me on the line. Erastus, he laid out a certain roadmap to fixing the problem.
Yes, exactly. He's talking about bringing some transmission lines on board. Currently, he says Kumasi is on 161 kV transmission line. They want to switch us onto a 330 kV transmission line. But before that, they are also bringing other things to stream to ensure that the outages at least will lessen. But they cannot say that they can rule it out completely, and they do not know when they will come. And so they are asking customers to bear with them and to pray for them as well.
Greco is constructing a 330 kV transmission lines to offload some of their congestion on the 161 kV line. And they have in 3 phases. They've completed the first 2 phases. They are from Kintampo to Tamale and Tamale to Bolgatanga. Those 2 areas have been completed. They are yet to complete the last phase, which is from Kumasi to Kintampo. And the expected date is by the end of the year we should have a full 330 line from Kumasi all the way to the north.
So that is a story in Kumasi, and they will bear the biggest brunt of this because they have a timeline towards the end of the year. Now let's shift our attention to Accra, because here in Accra, the GRIDCO also addressed a press conference, and in attendance was the Minister for Energy and, of course, other executives addressing what the problem is for Greater Accra. Now, what the two main issues that is confronting us in Greater Accra, as was explained today, one is a shutdown of the Bui hydroelectric power plant, and the second is the upgrade of some GRIDCO infrastructure in Pokwase and Kaswa, and that's the explanation as to why we are going to be having the outages here in Accra. But the fundamental question that we need to return to is what we now have settled in Kumasi, which is, okay, if this is what it is, and we can expect these outages for the next, as the case is in Accra, up until July, can the authorities give us a schedule so we can all plan our lives? Kweku, you were at the press conference. Did you put that question to them?
Right. So, Evans, you'll recall on your PM Express, the corporate communications manager of GRIDCO said that they were in discussions with the Electricity Company of Ghana to put together a schedule for Ghanaians. And so I asked that question directly today to the Chief Executive Officer of GRIDCO, Jonathan Amakoba, and he said that as of now, they do not think it is necessary to put out this plan. And the explanation is that these outages are not scheduled. And so they said that this construction was going on at Pokwase and Kaswa is one of the reasons why these power outages are happening. And so they say up until when these institutions actually explain to them that they need the power to go off so that they do some part of the work, then they will do so. He explained to me the point.
I believe that when my director of system operations was speaking, and I also added my words to it, that when the time comes, we would inform Ghanaians. Currently, what we are doing, we have to be sure, because you cannot go and take off power and do nothing. We have to be sure of the time and then the extent. So we are liaising with the contractors, not only the contractors. ECG is also involved. NIDA, who is the project funding agency, is also involved. We are dealing with all these people to come up with a comprehensive timetable. And this timetable, as we said, is only for Accra and Winneba. It is not a nationwide thing. It is only for Accra and Winneba. Let's get that right, so that we don't go and say that there's a national timetable for load shedding or doom or whatever it is. That is not the case. This is the timetable which they are asking for outages in order to complete the works for the system to be resilient, so that we wouldn't have the intermittent outages that we are having.
Okay, so in other words, that time will come. The discussions will be had, and they will give us a timetable as that time arrives. But the key question is when? When will that time come? I mean, because everybody who lives in Accra knows that we've been experiencing these outages for many weeks now already. Yeah. And so when will the timetable come? He didn't give any clarity on the question of when. But obviously, Kweku, still at this press conference, they say they're doing a bit more works on some of the lines, and in addition to telling us that in essence, because of that, you expect some more outages.
Right. Yeah. So this the boss of GRIDCO now hands over to the heads of systems at the GRIDCO and explains that some of these construction works that are currently ongoing are in such a nature that they cannot put on the lights all the time. He explains that there are about 33,000 volts of energy at these construction sites. And so as and when it's necessary for these construction workers to demand that they put off the lights, they will do so.
What's the energy minister was there, correct? Yeah. What was his point?
Right. So the minister takes the podium and tries to explain that this is not doomsday that is coming, and this is not also a generational challenge, but these are some technical challenges that GRIDCO is facing. And he makes the point that once this construction works at Pokwase and Kaswa is finished by the end of July, this problem will be fixed.
I think one fact we can all attest to is that the power has not been as consistently on as we all expect. Some have labeled it a return of doomsday, and some have called it dundum and whatever. This morning we are here basically with Ghana Grid Company to try and explain to Ghanaians that what is happening is not as a result of a generational problem or fuel shortage, but really some technical difficulties and challenges one or two institutions might be going through. So without much ado, even though GRIDCO has been consistently coming out with press releases and press statements as to the cause of every power outage, we want them to take the opportunity of not only informing Ghanaians, of also reassuring us that what we are experiencing in a short time will be a thing of the past.
I want to bring in now the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Benjamin Boachi, who joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Boachi, let's start with the question about the expected further power cuts, but no timetable. Do you accept the explanations we've received both from ECG in Kumasi and GRICO in Accra, why they cannot give us a timetable anytime soon, although we can expect power cuts?
Yes, Evans, I appreciate the challenge GRICO will have in issuing a timetable from their end, because the situation at hand really is that you have systems that are being overloaded. What it means is that in some areas, the demand on the grid is higher than can be passed through the transmission system. So when there's so much load on the system, then it trips, right? So it's not something that happens all the time, depending on what the load looks like. But, I mean, the most important thing is that GRICO knows the capacity of their system, and they monitor it. They have a dashboard that look at, loads across the country. So when, you see that there is going to be an overload, they are able to knock off some places. All right, so maybe a guide as to which area will go off if there is an overload or there is a problem that requires that they knock off some places would help other people to actually plan. But it cannot continue that for a period that could extend to the end of the year, you can be taking out power without the people getting to know that they will have to. You can tell me how you might take my life. If you don't, I still enjoy it. But it's important people to prepare, for such eventualities. Because the reality is that as we speak now, is getting overloaded, and some of these trips will continue. Because if we look at the demand growth, and that would have been a positive sign for Ghana, the demand has quickly risen to 3,000 and inching up. So if we're able to sustain that demand, that helps us to run the power plants that we are paying for, that we are actually not consuming. So with a system challenge where the power can be generated, but you cannot wheel to the consumer, that deepens our woes as a country for us to continue to pay for power, and we cannot use that power.
The fundamental explanation for why we are having the power cuts, at least from GRICO's point of view, is that they are doing upgrades. I mean, in essence, they are installing new infrastructure, Pokwase, Kaswa mainly, and that is what is accounting for the outages that we're seeing, particularly in Accra and elsewhere. What do you make about that explanation? Is this an explanation that holds water for you?
I think that explanation was not really what GRICO should have told Ghana. You are building a new transmission system in Pokwase, for example, and once that system is complete, it's one of the important infrastructure that we really need, and that will help ease some of the pressure in Accra and improve the system significantly. But once that is not, completed, I do not see the relationship between that new infrastructure that is being developed and the existing infrastructure. I think the problem is the capacity of the existing infrastructure to wheel the load to the consumer. So to look at us in the face and say that because you are developing an infrastructure to resolve some of the challenges, that is what is causing the problem that we do have currently. And I think that is really not the case. The existing infrastructure is what we have a problem with. And the reason why we have that problem is because we have not acted. Demand grows. People add equipment every day. Every community would expand in demand. So they ought to have been planning ahead of time to accommodate that demand growth in their planning systems. And that hasn't happened. And that is why we are now waiting for that, critical infrastructure to be completed. But let's separate the conversation. Why the existing infrastructure is not able to deliver enough power to homes, for which reason some people have to be knocked off at some point, and also hope that they'll be able to complete this new infrastructure so that it can ease the pressure on the system. But they are separate conversations. The challenge really now is that their systems are not able to send a lot of power to ECG, and it's causing the trips across the country, not just Accra. 3 days ago, I think yesterday, NETCO issued a timetable for Brekum area, all right? And it tells you that the problems are not just in Accra here. They are happening around. And that is why critical investment in the transmission becomes extremely crucial to be able to deal with some of these problems. You have 161 kV lines going to Kumasi, and Kumasi has outgrown that line. We have waited for systems to be tripping before we now think of bringing, the 330 to the city. So these are some of the problems that really exist, and maybe an assurance on clear timelines to bring those projects on stream, and also assure people that you will be able to stay with those timelines and help resolve the problem along the way. That would probably help.
Mr. Benjamin Bacha, thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. I want to bring in Mr. Kojo Poku, an energy analyst who's also been watching this space very closely as this conversation has evolved for the last few days. He joins us on the telephone line right now. For that last point that Benjamin Bacha was making, we know tonight, at least in the case of Kumasi, the ECG confirms their main problem is that their lines are overloaded. And this certainly will not happen in a day. It would have been happening over a period of time. What for you is the reason why we haven't managed to fix this overloading problem to the point where it's almost reached a crisis point?
Well, Evans, good evening. Well, I think when we start talking about energy crisis, right, everybody talks about ECG, GridCo, Ministry of Energy. Nobody mentions Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance is the basic problem we have in this country. When the technical people decide that this is what we need to do, when the technical people text their request to the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Finance decides to either give or not give. And in the last 3 years, Ministry of Finance has decided not to give. These telltale signs of outdated machines and improvement or overhauling or new systems having to put in place. Most of them, the request has gone to the highest body of government, and Ministry of Finance has been asked to make money available to GridCo, and those monies have never been released. So we are in this problem, and we all know that money is one of the key fundamentals of solving some of these. But we are here.
I mean, but I'm sure you've heard, government elements say this is not a financial problem; it's a technical one.
Well, yes, it is when they say it's not a financial problem, what they are trying to say is that currently they have the money, so it is not that they don't have money now, but it's a technical challenge, which is true. It's a technical challenge because the machine or the line that was not changed or was not repaired or was not upgraded is now tripping. So it's a technical challenge now, but it's a financial one because over a period, money has not been released for the upgrade, the new ones to be built, and for the maintenance. So when you are in the problem and you are holding money, of course it's not a financial problem because in your pocket you think you have the money. But it's a technical presently because you never use the money to solve the technical problem. And it will take time for us to come out of it. But let me quickly clarify something that my brother Bembuachi asked and said, and you asked him. You see, I don't think when GridCo did the presentation, they said that the current outages in Kumasi is as a result of ongoing work.
The Kumasi is, and in fact, the Kumasi ECG director said it, that there is overloading of the lines. I think the lines that go all the way to the north, and the second buoy, two things. And he also mentioned, I think, voltage fluctuations there too.
Right. So the current system is basically not good for purpose. So it trips. It's either overload or it's low voltage, as the man explained today, Mr. Ba explained today. We have a current situation which is causing the outages. There are planned scheduled upgrades. There are planned constructions. Those planned constructions to resolve the current problem would bring about some outages. So there's two different conversations. The planned construction and planned upgrades that will bring about outages, and the current outages, which is as a result of equipment and transmission lines not fit for purpose. So those are the two different distinctions and the clarification I want to give to what Mr. Boachi said. I'm
grateful, Kojopoku, for that. What do you make of this conversation tonight? I'm pretty sure you may be experiencing it right now in your homes. Send me a WhatsApp, 055-1111-997.
Why I do what? I for come and boss say in client come, but I don't get credit on my phone. I beg, I go use your phone.
I'm laughing like killer. In this day and age, your excuse for not making that call is that you don't have credit. Oh, then you are not a Vodafone customer. Because you get a boozing 500% bonus anytime you buy credit via Vodafone Cash or Vodafone Credit Transfer. It's like you didn't hear me well. 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 500%. Hey, my friend, you don't have an excuse. Oh, excuse no shit. Dial *110# or visit the nearest credit transfer vendor to buy credit because 500% bonus. Vodafone.
Ready?
Hey, I say, mix the cement in correct proportional.